Magic World, which is the derivative of Elric and Stormbringer and that line of games for Chaosium, the little setting that came with it wasn't very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And so the game didn't sell very well. And I'm working on a setting for that, a license to Chaosium, to create a setting that you can play Magic World with, because I like the system.
Right.
And so I think, creating a setting with that, and people are very excited about that.
Yeah,
But,
I have been having, I'm glad you bring this up because I have been having immense success in the last 2 years. Um, I basically said, look, I love Glorantha, etc. Now, one thing that I always wanted my itch scratched and I never did was to pick up Rune Quest, what they call RQ2,
right.
which is, if you think about it, the alleged RQ1 is like such a temporary little knockoff
It
that
is.
the really RQ1 and RQ2 really just should be early RuneQuest as a batch, really.
Yeah.
So anyway, but you take that and you realize that although Glorantha is front and center as the example, it is also explicit there that you can use the metaphysics, the runes and stuff, to make up your own
Right.
pantheon, and you can combine the runes however you want for the different gods. You can
Right.
basically do, if you will, a Glorantha of your own.
Yes.
And when I say you can, I don't mean like hypothetically. I mean people are being encouraged to do this to some extent in the book. Now,
Right.
I think something happened in the 80s where that got lost. Part of it is BRP and the sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say hysteria, the euphoria. That's the word. The euphoria of licensing and the euphoria in general that people had about, oh my God, generic system. You have
Yes.
BRP, you've got the hero, the hero system, and GURPS. Steve Jackson Games basically are kind of competing to see who can do that thing first, and
Right.
and they weren't alone, and it continues on. And to this day, when someone says that's a great system, I could hack it for anything, and you're kind of going, okay, that's a certain euphoria.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a very
That's true.
practical, concept in truth, because my claim is that yes, you can use GURPS for anything as long as you don't mind it turning into GURPS. And I would
Right.
say the same thing for BRP. But still, so what I'm talking about is not treating RQ2 as a generic system. I'm saying,
Yeah.
no, let's stick with Ancient World. Let's stick with Bronze Age. Let's
Right.
stick with, or something like it. Let's stick with something that taps into mythic information rather than raw historical information.
Yeah.
And pull in historical stuff like they gave us a player last night was impressed. He said, "Wow, they don't have studded leather in here. They have brigantine. They have like armor,
Yes.
like real armor with names." And I was saying, well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but you're pulling in actual stuff that supports being able to do that mythic stuff,
Right.
right? So I'm saying that's what I wanted to do. So a couple of years ago, I spitballed a few things, and it wasn't more than a couple pages notes, about a setting that I would use that for.
Okay.
And I played the hell out of it. And it really took off. And I ended up with like an immense number of pages. And I ended up as well playing it with people I didn't know at conventions and stuff. And the fact they just took to it and like seized this setting, and like there was like, that's pretty cool. Then recently, I've been playing a somewhat more straightforward fantasy setting using the same system that I
Right.
didn't really take very seriously, even. And damn it, now we've got a whole bunch of cult write ups. And not only that, but I said to the players just last night, listen, I did just mean this to be a knockoff so that a couple of you could get a taste for fantasy role playing, like you asked.
Yeah.
Kind of ready to finish up for a bit. And I thought I was going to lose a limb. No, we ain't stopping.
They do seem to be having a good time.
Right.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
from observing, they seem to be having a very good time.
So the question is, there's this notion that there's sort of a lost application of Rune Quest. Something about the
Yeah.
way BRP came out and something about the way Avalon Hill handled Rune Quest
Yeah.
sort of lost the idea of a non-generic application of those rules that was original, something you do with it.
Even though Avalon Hill basically said, "Oh, you can play this in Earth. You can
Right.
use
They
that
even
Earth's
called it
history."
Fantasy Europe. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that still, I agree with you. That still did sort of derail um, the idea. RuneQuest for me was, we played at the time that I first played it. We'd played, D&D, obviously, Shadowrun, Cyberpunk stuff, and they were good. I liked them. But RuneQuest was an epiphany,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't exactly put the finger. It wasn't just Glorantha, and it
Right.
wasn't just the
Right.
rules. It
Right.
was the rules and Glorantha together.
Yeah, I
Where I
agree.
was like,
It's one of the
you know,
great role playing achievements. I mean, we just got to
yeah,
settle back and say that, and it's a shame that people really aren't coming out as loudly. They didn't come out as loudly saying this 20 years ago the way they are now that Greg has died. So
right.
I think it's kind of a shame myself.
I
The
agree.
but the idea is that uh, we are looking therefore at the same question. Given, let's take those rules. I mean, you and I are intimately familiar with at least a couple of phases of RuneQuest apiece. I'm not going to claim
Right,
all of them because then my head would explode, and there's ones I've never even
right,
looked at. But
right.
let's you and I are familiar with at least a couple of iterations of RuneQuest apiece, and we can fairly ask the question: where do situations come from? Some of
Right.
them are very setting driven. This is, for example, Glorantha. This is where we are in Glorantha. This is when we are in Glorantha, and then the player's eyes glaze over at this point, and you catch yourself and say, "Okay,
Right.
never mind all that," and
Right.
you say, "Okay, right here, this is where you got to look out when you take a caravan through here because the Minotaurs will get you,
Yes.
and it's still their land, and nobody's going to cry if you die because you went in there.
Right.
So, good luck."
Yeah.
And so that's where we're playing, and the the then there's this other idea of, okay, well, hold on, wait, what about our characters? I made, you know, a, we talked about this lunar thing, and I decided I wanted to be a merchant, kind of adventurer guy, and so we talked about this. Who is this Eterius guy? Some kind of god of merchants for these moon empress lady or something.
Right.
And okay, so I'm going to play one of the, and I kind of got this idea of an adventuring merchant. I'm like, you realize you're going into an occupied area with wilderness that's uncontrolled, and I'm like, badass. I'm the guy who's blazing these trails. You know, there's got barbarians down here who don't like us. You said, cool. I'm going to sell them
Got
shit they
it.
never saw before. Right.
Right.
I'm showing up with opium. They've never had opium. Okay, let's go. So
That's good.
we're doing this, and therefore I sort of role played just now. I sort of fake role played this enthusiastic but not very well informed player,
Yep.
picking up whatever he can out of this gobbledygook that you just waving around your source books of Lunar Empire stuff and everything, right?
Yes.
And I've soaked up what I can, but I've given you enough, right? I mean, as a
It,
game master, saying, okay, if my job is to come up with prepared adversarial stuff, I'm not making it up one step ahead of the players. Prepared adversarial stuff, and I'm gonna honor. I'm not gonna treat everybody as I'm not gonna just throw you in a dungeon and you got to look for treasure. No, I'm gonna honor what you said. We're gonna be on your caravan. So I guess
yeah.
I'm gonna, and so you're gonna honor what I said, and I'm desperately trying to pick it up. The things you're saying, and situation can't be prefabricated entirely. It's not like a play. The stage is not fully set. The script is
Mm.
not fully done. Right? We're not there
Yeah.
just to act it out.
Right. Right.
And so
Yes.
there's a balance point of how much do we know what each other is contributing, how much are we buying into trying saying, well, we're going to honor that. Partly through
Yep.
some of your prep, partly through what we do in play, we're going to pick up what each other is laying down to talk like musicians.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
No, I get that. Yep.
And I think that's really the only place the situation is ever going to come from.
Okay.
Right? Otherwise, everybody is going. I mean, it doesn't matter who contributes what theoretically.
Right.
Experientially, it matters a lot how it's done
Yeah.
in any given instance. But theoretically, as long as the tasks are properly, laid out, then
Right.
then we can do this. And I think that one thing I've been hitting a lot lately is the notion of the difference between this kind of fiction making and all the others, or nearly all the others.
Right.
Because in two ways. One is that it's not transitive,
Okay.
right? It's not, we don't have creator over here and, consumer over there.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and second, it's not, um, it's not monetized,
Right.
right? And I think it's kind of a shame, really, in a lot of ways, for almost any fun thing that people do as a group or together, you can find all the way from amateur time, non-performance amateur time, just doing it for no audience or for a
Right.
very intimate audience of fellow practitioners at all, if anybody,
Right.
all the way up to the World Cup, all the way up to the glitziest possible, commercialized possible, mass marketed possible version. You can do that for all kinds of things,
You're true. Yeah, you
right?
can.
But for stories, for some reason, as soon as you stop commerce, something, I mean, there's, then one can talk about fanfic and stuff like that, but it's kind of funny. I mean, the notion that you could be producing a story as good as competently as for lack of a better word, legitimate or worthy as
Right.
somebody who's doing it for money, for some reason that's not, people don't buy that, or people were trained not to think about it. We're trained
Yeah.
to say, wait a minute, it has to be crap, or it has to be funsy, or it has to be ironic, or it has to be derivative, or it has to
Right.
be, it has to be somehow amateur hour in the worst sense of the word.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I
Yeah,
totally
and
agree with
so
that.
we'll talk a bit more about that when you come back.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, take care.